Welcome to the Idiot Book Nook, episode 6. We are going to be getting into chapter 6 of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's / Philosopher's Stone. We have a bit of housekeeping to get through. My name is Blazewing. My pronouns are she, her, and they, them.
I am the Reading Dragon, and my pronouns are she, her.
I'm Lady Punnet. My pronouns are she, her, unless I feel like a blob. In that case, it's they, them.
For our first item of housekeeping, our disclaimer at the beginning of this episode. We here at the Idiot Book Nook do not support the actions, views, or opinions of J.K. Rowling. We are simply Harry Potter fans who grew up with the books during important times in our life. For us, Hogwarts is, and most likely will continue to be home. We do not condone the racist, transphobic, and anti-Semitic imagery that is depicted within the pages of these books. That is important for us to know, and for you guys to hear every episode. We are going to continue to repeat that every episode, so you know exactly where we stand in case there's any questions, or in case we have new listeners. We also have an announcement that, well, by the time you guys hear it in this episode, it'll be a little out of date, but here it is. We have had a chat during our Twitch break, and basically for you guys that are listening to the podcast, between episodes, we are going to be upping our podcast episode production and release to 2 episodes a week, starting the week of
something or other.
February 14th. We will be
releasing Valentine's Day.
So those of you that are listening on Twitch, you are going to be the first to hear this. And then when we release our podcast episodes starting next week, they will also be hearing this. We're going to be releasing on Mondays and Thursdays. So we're going to have 2 episodes per week, which means the most you should have to go without an episode of the Idiot Book Nook, if you are listening, is 3 days.
So happy Valentine's Day from us to you on that.
Yes, happy Valentine's Day indeed. Just something we thought you guys would want to hear. And again, this announcement's going to be out of date by the time this episode rolls around. I'm going to be stitching it into our other episodes. So I apologize for any any kind of incongruency within the upcoming episodes for next week, but it is what it is. This was kind of an on the fly thing, and we apologize for that. But with that being said, I'm thinking it might be time for us to duck into our next episode. So,
yes.
For our narrator, take it away, please.
Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's or Philosopher's Stone. Narrated by the Reading Dragon, Blazewing 2010, and Lady Punnet. Chapter 6. The Journey from Platform 9 3/4. Harry's last month with the Dursleys wasn't fun. True, Dudley was now so scared of Harry he wouldn't stay in the same room, while Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon didn't shut Harry in his cupboard, force him to do anything, or shout at him. In fact, they didn't speak to him at all. Half terrified, half furious, they acted as though any chair with Harry in it were empty. Although this was an improvement in many ways, it did become a bit depressing after a while. Harry kept his room, with his new owl for company. He had decided to call her Hedwig, a name he had found in a history of magic. His school books were very interesting. He lay on his bed, reading late into the night, Hedwig swooping in and out of an open window as she pleased. It was lucky that Aunt Petunia didn't come in to vacuum any more, because Hedwig kept bringing back dead mice. Every night, before he went to sleep, Harry ticked off another day on the piece of paper he had pinned to the wall, counting down to September the 1st. On the last day of August, he thought he'd better speak to his aunt and uncle about getting to King's Cross Station the next day. So he went down to the living room where they were watching a quiz show on television. He cleared his throat to let them know he was there, and Dudley screamed and ran from the room.
Uncle Vernon?
Uncle Vernon grunted to show he was listening.
I need to be at King's Cross tomorrow to go to Hogwarts.
Uncle Vernon grunted again.
Would it be all right if you gave me a lift?
Grunt. Harry supposed that meant yes.
Thank you.
He was about to go back upstairs when Uncle Vernon actually spoke.
Funny way to get to a wizard's school, the train. Magic carpets all got punctures, have they?
Harry didn't say anything.
Where is the school, anyway? I don't know,
said Harry, realizing this for the first time. He pulled the ticket Hagrid had given him out of his pocket.
Just take the train from platform 9 3/4 at 11 o'clock.
He read. His aunt and uncle stared.
Platform what? 9 3/4. Don't talk rubbish,
said Uncle Vernon.
There is no platform 9 3/4. It's on my ticket. Barking,
said Uncle Vernon.
Howling mad, the lot of them. You'll see. You just wait. All right, we'll take you to King's Cross. You going up to London? We're going up to London tomorrow anyways, or I wouldn't bother. Why are you going to London?
Harry asked, trying to keep things friendly.
Taking Dudley to the hospital,
growled Uncle Vernon.
Gotta have that ruddy tail removed before he goes to Smeltings.
Harry woke at 5 o'clock the next morning and was so excited and nervous to go back to sleep. He was too excited and nervous to go back to sleep. He got up and pulled on his jeans because he didn't want to walk into the station in his withers. His withers.
His withers?
His withers.
Love it. Love it.
He got up and pulled on his jeans because he didn't want to walk into the station in his wizard's robes. He'd change on the train. He checked his Hogwarts list yet again to make sure he had everything he needed, saw that Hedwig was shut safely in her cage, and then paced the room, waiting for the Dursleys to get up. 2 hours later, Harry's huge, heavy trunk had been loaded into the Dursleys' car. Aunt Petunia had talked Dudley into sitting next to Harry, and they had set off. They reached King's Cross at 10:30. Uncle Vernon dumped Harry's trunk into a cart and wheeled it into the station for him. Harry thought this was strangely kind until Uncle Vernon stopped dead, facing the platforms with a nasty grin on his face.
Well, there you are, boy. Platform 9, platform 10. Your platform should be somewhere in the middle, but they don't seem to have built it yet, do they?
He was quite right, of course. There was a big plastic number 9 over one platform, and a big plastic number 10 over the one next to it. And in the middle, nothing at all.
Have a good term,
said Uncle Vernon with an even nastier smile. He left without another word. Harry turned and saw the Dursleys drive away. All three of them were laughing. Harry's mouth went rather dry. What on earth was he going to do? He was starting to attract a lot of funny looks because of Hedwig. He'd have to ask someone. He stopped a passing guard, but didn't dare mention platform 9 3/4. The guard had never heard of Hogwarts, and when Harry couldn't even tell him what part of the country it was in, he started to get annoyed, as though Harry was being stupid on purpose. Getting desperate, Harry asked for the train that left at 11 o'clock, but the guard said there wasn't one. In the end, the guard strode away, muttering about time wasters. Harry was now trying hard not to panic. According to the large clock over the arrivals board, he had 10 minutes left to get on the train to Hogwarts, and he had no idea how to do it. He was stranded in the middle of a station with a trunk he could hardly lift, a pocket full of wizard money, and a large owl. Hagrid must have forgotten to tell him something you had to do, like tapping the third brick on the left to get to Diagon Alley. He wondered if he should get out his wand and stop. He wondered if he should get out his wand and start tapping the ticket inspector's stand between platforms 9 and 10. At that moment, a group of people passed just behind him, and he caught a few words of what they were saying.
Sorry.
You're good.
I was looking up something because I realized a thing. But one
Yep.
second. Where? I went too far down.
Near the end of page 71.
That's what happens when you try to read ahead.
Oh, the amount of times I've had that happen to me in school.
Yep.
With muggles, of course.
Harry swung around. The speaker was a plump woman who was talking to 4 boys, all with flaming red hair. Each of them was pushing a trunk like Harry's in front of him, and they had an owl. Heart hammering, Harry pushed his cart after them. They stopped, and so did he, just near enough to hear what they were saying.
Now, what's the platform number?
Said the boy's mother.
9 3/4.
Piped a small girl, also red-headed, who was holding her hand.
Mom, can't I go? You're not old enough, Ginny. Now be quiet. All right, Percy, you go first.
What looked like the oldest boy marched toward platforms 9 and 10. Harry watched, careful not to blink in case he missed it. But just as the boy reached the dividing barrier between the 2 platforms, a large crowd of tourists came swarming in front of him, and by the time the last backpack had cleared away, the boy had vanished.
Fred, you're next.
The plump woman said.
I'm not Fred. I'm George.
Said the boy.
Honestly, woman, you call yourself our mother. Can't you tell I'm George?
Sorry, George, dear.
Only joking. I am Fred.
Said the boy, and off he went. His twin called after him to hurry up, and he must have done so, because a second later he had gone. But how had he done it? Now, the third brother was walking briskly toward the barrier. He was almost there, and then, quite suddenly, he wasn't anywhere. There was nothing else for it.
Excuse me?
Harry said to the plump woman.
Hello, dear.
She said.
First time at Hogwarts? Ron's new, too.
She pointed at the last and the youngest of her sons. He was tall, thin, and gangling, with freckles, big hands and feet, and a long nose.
Yes.
Said Harry.
The thing is, I don't know how to...
How to get onto the platform?
She said kindly, and Harry nodded.
Not to worry,
she said.
All you have to do is walk straight at the barrier between platforms 9 and 10. Don't stop. Don't be scared you'll crash into it. That's very important. Best do it a bit of a run if you're nervous. Go on. Go now before Ron.
Okay,
said Harry. He pushed his trolley around and stared at the barrier. It looked very solid. He started to walk toward it. People jostled him on their way to platforms 9 and 10. Harry walked more quickly. He was going to smash right into that barrier, and then he'd be in trouble. Leaning forward on his cart, he broke into a heavy run. The barrier was coming nearer and nearer. He wouldn't be able to stop. The cart was out of control. He was a foot away. He closed his eyes, ready for a crash. It didn't come. He kept on running. He opened his eyes. A scarlet steam engine was waiting next to a platform packed with people. A sign overhead said Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock. Harry looked behind him and saw a wrought iron archway where the barrier had been, with the words Platform 9 3/4 on it. He had done it. Smoke from the engine drifted over the heads of the chattering crowd, while cats of every color wound here and there between their legs. Owls hooted to one another in a disgruntled sort of way over the babble and the scraping of heavy trunks. The first few carriages were already packed with students, some hanging out of the window to talk to their families, some fighting over seats. Harry pushed his cart off down the platform in search of an empty seat. He passed a round-faced boy who was saying,
Gran, I've lost my toad again.
Oh, Neville.
He heard the old woman sigh.
Yes,
A boy with dreadlocks was surrounded by a small crowd.
Give us a look, Lee. Go on.
The boy lifted the lid of a box in his arms, and the people around him shrieked and yelled as something inside poked out a long, hairy leg. Harry pressed on through the crowd until he found an empty compartment near the end of the train. He put Hedwig inside first, and then started to shove and heave his trunk toward the train door. He tried to lift it up the steps, but could hardly raise one end, and twice he dropped it painfully on his foot.
Oh.
Want a hand?
It was one of the red-haired twins he'd followed through the barrier.
Yes, please.
Harry panted.
Oi, Fred! Come here and help!
With the twins' help, Harry's trunk was at last tucked away in a corner of the compartment.
Thanks,
said Harry, pushing his sweaty hair out of his eyes.
What's that?
Said one of the twins suddenly, pointing at Harry's lightning scar.
Blimey!
Said the other twin.
Are you... He is.
Said the first twin.
Aren't you?
He added to Harry.
What?
Said Harry.
Harry Potter!
Chorused the twins.
Oh, him.
Said Harry.
I mean, yes, I am.
The two boys gawked at him, and Harry felt himself turning red. Then, to his relief, a voice came floating in through the train's open door.
George, are you there?
Coming, Mom.
With a last look at Harry, the twins hopped off the train. Harry sat down next to the window where, half hidden, he could watch the red-haired family on the platform and hear what they were saying. Their mother had just taken out her handkerchief.
Ron, you've got something on your nose.
The youngest boy tried to jerk out of the way, but she grabbed him and began rubbing the end of his nose.
Mom, get off!
He wriggled free.
Has Ickle Ronnie got something on his nosy?
Said one of the twins.
Shut up.
Said
Where's
Ron.
Percy?
Said their mother.
He's coming now.
The oldest boy came striding into sight. He had already changed into his billowing black Hogwarts robes, and Harry noticed a shiny silver badge on his chest with the letter P on it.
Can't stay long, Mother.
He said.
I'm up front. The prefects have got 2 compartments to themselves. Oh, are you a prefect, Percy?
Said one of the twins, with an air of great surprise.
You should have said something. We had no idea. Hang on. I think I remember him saying something about it.
Said the other twin.
Once. Or twice. A minute. All summer. Oh, shut up.
Said Percy the prefect.
How come Percy gets new robes anyway?
Said one of the twins.
Because he's a prefect.
Said their mother fondly.
All right, dear. Well, have a good time. Send me an owl when you're there.
She kissed Percy on the cheek, and he left. Then she turned to the twins.
Now, you two. This year you behave yourselves. If I get one owl telling me you've blown up a toilet or...
Blown up a toilet? We've never blown up a toilet. Great idea, though. Thanks, Mom.
It's not funny. And look after Ron.
Don't worry. Uncle Ronnykins is safe with us. Shut up,
said Ron again. He was almost as tall as the twins already, and his nose was still pink where his mother had rubbed it.
Hey, Mom, guess what? Guess who we just met on the train?
Harry leaned back quickly so that they couldn't see him looking.
You know that black-haired boy who was near us in the station? Know who he is?
Who?
Harry Potter.
Harry heard the little girl's voice.
Oh, can I go on the train and see him, Mama, please? You've already seen him, Ginny, and the poor boy isn't something you goggle at in the zoo. Is he really, Fred? How do you know?
Asked him. Saw a scar. It's really there, like lightning.
Poor dear. No wonder he was alone, I wondered. He was ever so polite when he asked how to get on the platform.
Never mind that. Do you think he remembers what you-know-who looks like?
Their mother suddenly became very stern.
I forbid you to ask him, Fred. No, don't you dare. As though he needs reminding of that on his first day of school.
All right, keep your hair on.
A whistle sounded.
Hurry up,
Their mother said, and the three boys clambered onto the train. They leaned out of the window for her to kiss them goodbye, and their younger sister began to cry.
Don't, Ginny. We'll send you loads of owls. We'll send you a Hogwarts toilet seat.
George!
Only joking, Mom. Goddamn twins! I swear to God.
I love the twins. Oh, God. The train.
Our toilet seat.
Right? She's just got like a random toilet seat hanging on the wall of her room as a memento.
This is from last year when my brothers blew up the toilets in the third hallway to the left near the dormitories.
Yep.
Headcanon accepted.
Yes. The train...
Go ahead. I'll talk about it later. I'll talk about it post.
Okay. The train began to move. Harry saw the boys' mother waving and their sister half laughing, half crying, running to keep up with the train until it gathered too much speed. Then she fell back and waved. Harry watched the girl and her mother disappear as the train rounded the corner. Houses flashed past the window. Harry felt a great leap of excitement. He didn't know what he was going to do. He didn't know what he was going... Blech.
Didn't know where he was going. I think it was what's supposed to be.
Yeah. He didn't know where he was going to, but it had to be better than what was... Jesus, this sentence is messed up.
Better than what he was leaving behind.
Yeah. He didn't know where he was going to, but it had to be better than what he was leaving behind.
English.
The door... Yeah, English is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
The door of the compartment slid open, and the youngest red-headed boy came in.
Anyone sitting here?
He asked, pointing at the seat opposite Harry.
Everywhere else is full.
Harry shook his head, and the boy sat down. He glanced at Harry and then looked quickly out of the window, pretending he hadn't looked. Harry saw he still had a black mark on his nose.
Hey, Ron.
The twins were back.
Listen, we're going down the middle of the train, We're going down the middle of the train. Lee Jordan's got a tarantula down there. Right.
Mumbled Ron.
Harry,
said the other twin.
Did we introduce ourselves? Fred and George Weasley, and this is Ron, our brother. See you later, then. Bye,
said Harry and Ron. The twins slid the compartment door shut behind them.
Are you really Harry Potter?
Ron blurted out. Harry nodded.
Oh, well, I thought it might have been one of Fred and George's jokes,
said Ron.
And have you really got, you know...
He pointed at Harry's forehead. Harry pulled back his bangs to show the lightning scar. Ron stared.
So, that's where you-know-who... Yes,
said Harry.
but I can't remember it. Nothing?
said Ron eagerly.
Well, I remember a lot of green light, but nothing else. Wow,
said Ron. He sat and stared at Harry for a few moments. Then, as though he had suddenly realized what he was doing, he looked quickly out of the window again.
Are all your family wizards?
Asked Harry, who found Ron just as interesting as Ron found him.
Yes, I think so.
Said Ron.
I think Mom's got a second cousin who's an accountant, but we never talk about him. Was he a spicy accountant?
He might have been. That's why they couldn't talk about him. They're not old enough to know.
So, you must know loads of magic already.
The Weasleys were clearly one of those old wizarding families the Pale Boy in Diagon Alley had talked about.
I heard you went to live with Muggles,
said Ron.
What are they like? Horrible. Well, not all of them. My aunt and uncle and cousin are, though. I wish I had 3 wizard brothers. 5.
Said Ron. For some reason, he was looking gloomy.
I'm the 6th in our family to go to Hogwarts. You could say I've got a lot to live up to. Bill and Charlie have already left, and Bill was head boy and Charlie was captain of Quidditch. Now Percy's a prefect. Fred and George mess around a lot, but they still get really good marks, and everyone thinks they're really funny. Everyone expects me to do as well as the others, but if I do, it's no big deal because, well, they did it first. You never get anything new, either, with 5 brothers. I've got Bill's old robes, Charlie's old wand, and Percy's old rat.
Ron reached inside his jacket and pulled out a fat gray rat, which was asleep.
His name's Scabbers, and he's useless. He hardly ever wakes up. Percy got an owl from my dad for being made prefect, but they couldn't... I got Scabbers instead.
Ron's ears went pink. He seemed to think he'd said too much, because he went back to staring out the window. Harry didn't think there was anything wrong with not being able to afford an owl. After all, he'd never had any money in his life until a month ago. And he told Ron so. All about having to wear Dudley's old clothes and never getting proper birthday presents. This seemed to cheer Ron up.
And until Hagrid told me, I didn't know anything about being a wizard or about my parents or Voldemort.
Ron gasped.
What?
Said Harry.
You said you know whose name,
said Ron, sounding both shocked and impressed.
I'd have thought you of all people. I'm not trying to be brave or anything, saying the name,
said Harry.
I just never knew that you shouldn't. See what I mean? I've got loads to learn, I bet.
He added, voicing for the first time something that had been worrying him a lot lately.
I bet I'm the worst in the class. You won't be. There's loads of people who come from Muggle families, and they'll learn quickly enough.
While they had been talking, the train had carried them out of London. Now they were speeding past fields full of cows and sheep. They were quiet for a time, watching the fields and lanes flick past. Around 12:30, there was a great clattering outside in the corridor, and a smiling, dimpled woman slid back their door and said,
Anything off the cut, dear? Well, actually, it should be anything off the trolley.
Yep.
But
yeah.
Americans.
Yep.
Harry, who hadn't had any breakfast, leapt to his feet, but Ron's ears went pink again, and he muttered that he'd brought sandwiches. Harry went out into the corridor. He had never had any money for candy with the Dursleys, and now that he had pockets rattling with gold and silver, he was ready to buy as many Mars bars as he could carry. But the woman didn't have Mars bars. What she did have were Betty Bott's every flavored beans.
Birdie Bots.
Betty Bott's every flavor beans.
Birdie Bots.
Drooble's Birdie Bot? It says Betty.
It's supposed to be Birdie Bots.
God damn it. Okay.
Stupid Americans.
No, a lot of this is misspelled.
Yeah, just keep going.
she did have were Bertie Bott's every flavor beans, Drooble's best blowing gum, chocolate frogs, pumpkin pastries, cauldron cakes, licorice wands, and a number of other strange things Harry had never seen in his life. Not wanting to miss anything, he got something. He got some of everything and paid the woman 11 silver sickles and 7 bronze nuts. Ron stared as Harry brought it all back into the compartment and tipped it into. Jesus, let me do that sentence again. Ron stared as Harry brought it all back into the compartment and tipped it onto an empty seat.
Hungry, are you? Starving,
said Harry, taking a large bite out of a pumpkin pasty. Ron had taken out a lumpy package and unwrapped it. There were 4 sandwiches inside. He pulled one of them apart and said,
"She always forgets that I don't like corned beef. Swap you for one of these,"
said Harry, holding up a pasty.
"Go on." "You don't want this. It's all dry,"
said Ron.
"She hasn't got much time,"
he added quickly.
With 5 of us. "Go on, have a pasty,"
said Harry, who had never had anything to share before, or indeed anyone to share with. It was a nice feeling, sitting there with Ron, eating their way through all Harry's pasties, cakes, and candies. The sandwiches lay forgotten.
"What are these?"
Harry asked Ron, holding up a pack of chocolate frogs.
"They're not really frogs, are they?"
He was starting to feel that nothing would surprise him.
No,
said Ron.
"But see what the card is. I'm missing a grippa." "What?" "Oh, of course you wouldn't know. Chocolate frogs have cards inside them, to collect famous witches and wizards. I've got about 500, but I haven't got any Agrippa or Ptolemy."
Harry unwrapped his chocolate frog and picked up the card. It showed a man's face. He wore half-moon glasses and had a long, crooked nose and flowing silver hair, beard, and mustache. Underneath the picture was the name Albus Dumbledore.
"So this is Dumbledore,"
said Harry.
"Don't tell me you've never heard of Dumbledore,"
said Ron.
"Can I have a frog? I might get Agrippa." "Thanks."
Harry turned over his card and read, Albus Dumbledore, currently headmaster of Hogwarts. Considered by many the greatest wizard of modern times, Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945, for the discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his work on alchemy with his partner Nicholas Flamel. Professor Dumbledore enjoys chamber music and ten-pin bowling. Harry turned the card back over and saw, to his astonishment, that Dumbledore's face had disappeared.
"He's gone." "Well, you can't expect him to hang around all day,"
said Ron.
"He'll be back." "No, I've got Morgana again. I've got about 6 of her. Do you want it? You can start collecting."
Ron's eyes strayed to the pile of chocolate frogs waiting to be unwrapped.
"Help yourself,"
said Harry.
"But in, the Muggle world, people just stay put in photos." "Do they? What? They don't move at all?"
Ron sounded amazed.
"Weird."
Harry stared as Dumbledore sidled back into the picture on his card and gave him a small smile. Ron was more interested in eating the frogs than looking at the famous witches and wizards cards, but Harry couldn't keep his eyes off them. Soon he had not only Dumbledore and Morgana, but Hengist of Woodcroft, Alberic Gronion, Circe, Paracelsus, and Merlin. He finally tore his eyes away from the druidess Cleodna, who was scratching her nose, to open a bag of Bertie Bott's every flavor beans.
"You want to be careful with those,"
Ron warned Harry.
"When they say every flavor, they mean every flavor. You get all the ordinary ones like chocolate and peppermint and marmalade, but then you get spinach and liver and tripe. George reckons he got a booger-flavored one once."
Ron picked up a green bean, looked at it carefully, and bit into a corner.
Ugh. See? Sprouts.
They had a good time eating the every flavor beans. Harry got toast, coconut, baked bean, strawberry, curry, grass, coffee, sardine, and was even brave enough to nibble and end off a funny gray one with Ron. And was even brave enough to nibble the end off a funny gray one Ron wouldn't touch, which turned out to be Pepper. The countryside, now flying past the window, was becoming wilder. The neat fields had gone. Now there were woods, twisting rivers, and dark green hills. There was a knock on the door of their compartment, and the round-faced boy Harry had passed on platform 9 3/4 came in. He looked tearful.
Sorry,
He said.
but have you seen a toad at all?
When they shook their heads, he wailed.
I've lost him. He keeps getting away from me. He'll turn up.
Said Harry.
Yes.
Said the boy miserably.
Well, if you see him...
He left.
I don't know why he's so bothered.
Said Ron.
If I'd brought a toad, I'd lose it as quick as I could. Mind you, I brought Scabbers, so I can't complain.
The rat was still snoozing on Ron's lap.
He might have died, and you wouldn't know the difference.
Said Ron in disgust.
I tried to turn him yellow yesterday to make him more interesting, but the spell didn't work. I'll show you. Look.
He rummaged around in his trunk and pulled out a very battered-looking wand. It was chipped in places, and something white was glinting at the end.
Unicorn hair is nearly poking out. Anyway...
He had just raised his wand when the compartment door slid open again. The toadless boy was back, but this time he had a girl with him. She was already wearing her new Hogwarts robes.
Has anyone seen a toad? Neville's lost one,
She said. She had a bossy sort of voice, lots of bushy brown hair, and rather large front teeth.
We've already told him we haven't seen it.
Said Ron, but the girl wasn't listening. She was looking at the wand in his hand.
Oh, are you doing magic? Let's see it then.
She sat down. Ron looked taken aback.
All right.
He cleared his throat.
Sunshine, daisies, and buttermellow. Turn the stupid fat rat yellow.
He waved his wand, but nothing happened. Scabbers stayed gray and fast asleep.
Are you sure that's a real spell?
Said the girl.
Well, it's not very good, is it? I've tried a few simple spells just for practice, and it all worked for me. Nobody in my family's magic at all. It was ever such a surprise when I got my letter, but I was ever so surprised, of course. I mean, it's the very best school of witchcraft there is. I've learned all our course books by heart, of course, and I just hope it will be enough. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way. Who are you?
She said this all very fast. Harry looked at Ron, who was relieved to see by his stunned face that he hadn't learned all the course books by heart either.
I'm Ron Weasley.
Ron muttered.
Harry Potter.
Said Harry.
Are you really?
Said Hermione.
I know all about you, of course. I got a few extra books for background reading, and you're in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts and great wizarding events of the 20th century.
Am I?
Said Harry, feeling dazed.
Goodness, don't you know? I'd have found out everything I could of if it was me.
Said Hermione.
Do either of you know what house you'll be in? I've been asking around, and I'm hoping I'm in Gryffindor. It sounds by far the best. I hear Dumbledore himself was in it, but I suppose Ravenclaw wouldn't be too bad. Anyways, we better go look for Neville's toad. You two better change. You know, I expect we'll be there soon.
And she left, taking the toadless boy with her. She's been Ravenclaw.
Whatever house I'm in, I hope she's not in it.
Said Ron. He threw his wand back into his trunk.
Stupid spell. George gave it to me. Bet he knew it was a dud. What house are your brothers in?
Asked Harry.
Gryffindor.
Said Ron. Gloom seemed to be settling on him again.
Mom and Dad were in it too. I don't know what they'll say if I'm not. I don't suppose Ravenclaw would be too bad, but imagine if they put me in Slytherin. That's the house full. I mean, you know who was in? Yeah.
Said Ron. He flopped back into his seat, looking depressed.
You know, I think the ends of Scabbers' whiskers are a little brighter.
Said Harry, trying to take Ron's mind off houses.
So, what do your oldest brothers do now that they've left, anyway?
Harry was wondering what a wizard did once he'd finished school.
Well, Charlie's in Romania studying dragons, and Bill's in Africa doing something for Gringotts.
Said Ron.
Did you hear about Gringotts? It's been all over the Daily Prophet. I don't suppose you get that with Muggles. Someone tried to rob a high-security vault.
Harry stared.
Really? What happened to them? Nothing. That's why it's such big news. They've been caught. My dad says it must have been a powerful dark wizard to get around Gringotts, but they don't think they took anything. That's what's odd. Of course, everyone gets scared when something like this happens in case you know who's behind it.
Harry turned this news over in his mind. He was starting to get a prickle of fear every time you-know-who was mentioned. He supposed this was all part of entering the magical world, but it had been a lot more comfortable saying Voldemort without worrying.
What's your Quidditch team?
Ron asked.
I don't know any.
Harry confessed.
What?
Ron looked dumbfounded.
Oh, you wait. It's the best game in the world.
And he was off, explaining all about the 4 balls and the positions of the 7 players, describing famous games he'd been to with his brothers, and the broomstick he'd like to get if he had the money. He was just taking Harry through the finer points of the game. He was just talking Harry through the finer points of the game when the compartment door slid open yet again. But it wasn't Neville, the toadless boy, nor Hermione Granger this time. 3 boys entered, and Harry recognized the middle one at once. It was the pale boy from Madame Malkin's robe shop. He was looking at Harry with a lot more interest than he'd shown back at Diagon Alley.
Is it true?
He said.
They're saying all down the train that Harry Potter's in this compartment. So it's you, is it? Yes,
said Harry. He was looking at the other boys. Both of them were thick-set and looked extremely mean. Standing on either side of the pale boy, they looked like bodyguards.
Oh, this is Crabbe, and this is Goyle,
said the pale boy carelessly, noticing where Harry was looking.
And my name's Malfoy. Draco Malfoy.
Ron gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a snigger. Draco Malfoy looked at him.
Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all about the Weasley. All the Weasleys have red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford.
He turned back to Harry.
You'll soon find that some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there.
He held out his hand to shake Harry's, but Harry didn't take it.
I think I can tell who the wrong sort are for myself, thanks,
he said coolly. Draco Malfoy didn't go red, but a pink tinge appeared in his pale cheeks.
I'd be careful if I were you, Potter,
he said slowly.
Unless you're a bit politer, you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them either. You hang around with riffraff like the Weasleys and that Hagrid, and it'll rub off on you.
Both Harry and Ron stood up.
Say that again.
Ron said, his face as red as his hair.
Oh, you're going to fight us, are you?
Malfoy sneered.
Unless you get out now,
said Harry, more bravely than he felt, because Crabbe and Goyle were a lot bigger than him or Ron.
But we don't feel like leaving, do we, boys? We've eaten all our food, and you still seem to have some.
Goyle reached toward the chocolate frogs next to Ron. Ron leapt forward, but before he'd so much as touched Goyle, Goyle let out a horrible yell. Scabbers the rat was hanging off his finger. Sharp little teeth sunk deep into Goyle's knuckle. Crabbe and Malfoy backed away as Goyle swung Scabbers around and round, howling. And when Scabbers finally flew off and hit the window, all three of them disappeared at once. Perhaps they thought there were more rats lurking among the sweets. Or perhaps they'd heard footsteps, because a second later, Hermione Granger had come in.
Sorry, say that again. You cut out.
What has been going on?
She said, looking at all the sweets all over the sweets all over the floor and Ron picking up Scabbers by his tail.
I think he's been knocked out.
Ron said to Harry. He looked closer at Scabbers.
No, I don't believe it. He's gone back to sleep.
And so he had.
You've met Malfoy before?
Harry explained about their meeting in Diagon Alley.
I've heard of his family,
said Ron darkly.
They were some of the first who came back to our side after you-know-who disappeared. Said they'd been bewitched. My dad doesn't believe it. He says Malfoy's father doesn't need an excuse to go over to the dark side.
He turned to Hermione.
Can we help you with something?
You better hurry up and put your robes on. I'd just been up to the front to ask the conductor, and he says we're nearly there. You haven't been fighting, have you? You'll be in trouble before we even get there.
Scabbers has been fighting, not us,
said Ron, scowling at her.
Would you mind leaving while we change?
All right. I only came in here because people outside are behaving very childishly and running up and down the corridors,
said Hermione in a sniffy voice.
And you've got dirt on your nose, by the way. Did you know?
Ron glared at her as she left. Harry peered out of the window. It was getting dark. He could see mountains and forests under a deep purple I'm just going to do this paragraph again.
Yep.
Ron glared at her as she left. Harry peered out of the window. It was getting dark. He could see mountains and forests under a deep purple sky. The train did seem to be slowing down. He and Ron took off their jackets and pulled on their long black robes. Ron's were a bit short for him. You could see his sneakers underneath them. A voice echoed through the train.
We will be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes' time. Please leave your luggage on the train. It will be taken to the school separately.
Harry's stomach lurched with nerves as Ron, he saw, looked pale under his freckles. They crammed their pockets with the last of the sweets and joined the crowd thronging the door. The train slowed right down and finally stopped. People pushed their way toward the door and out onto a tiny, dark platform. Harry shivered in the cold night air. A lamp came bobbing over the heads of the students, and Harry heard a familiar voice.
First years over here. All right there, Harry.
Hagrid's big, hairy face beamed the sea of heads.
Come on, follow me. Any more first years? Mind your step now. First years, follow me.
Slipping and stumbling, they followed Hagrid down what seemed to be a steep, narrow path. It was so dark on either side of them that Harry thought there must be thick trees there. Nobody spoke much. Neville, the boy who kept losing his toad, sniffed once or twice.
1 second. You all first years, y'all get your first sight of Hogwarts in a sec.
Hagrid called over his shoulder.
Just round this bend here.
There was a loud "woo." The narrow path had opened suddenly onto the edge of a great black lake.
Lake.
Yeah, lake. Yeah, it's just spelled as take.
I know.
Damn it. The narrow path had opened suddenly onto the edge of a great black lake, perched atop a high mountain on the other side, its windows sparkling in the starry sky, was a vast castle with many turrets and towers.
No more than 4 to a boat.
Hagrid called, pointing to a fleet of little boats sitting in the water by the shore. Harry and Ron were followed into their boat by Neville and Hermione.
Everyone in.
Shouted Hagrid, who had a boat to himself.
Right then. Forward!
And the fleet of little boats moved off all at once, gliding across the lake, which was as smooth as glass. Everyone was silent, staring up at the great castle overhead. It towered over them as they sailed nearer and nearer to the cliff on which it stood.
Heads down,
yelled Hagrid as the first boats reached the cliff. They all bent their heads, and the little boats carried them through a curtain of ivy that hid a wide opening in the cliff face. They were carried along a dark tunnel, which seemed to be taking them right underneath the castle, until they reached a kind of underground harbor, where they clambered out onto rocks and pebbles.
Oi! You there! Is this your toad?
Said Hagrid, who was checking the boats as people climbed out of them.
Trevor!
Cried Neville blissfully, holding out his hands. Then they clambered up a passageway in the rock after Hagrid's lamp, coming out at last onto smooth, damp grass, right in the shadow of the castle. They walked up a flight of stone steps and crowded around a huge oak front door.
Everyone here? You there? Still got your toad?
Hagrid raised a gigantic fist and knocked 3 times on the castle door.
And that wraps it up for Chapter 6. Again, a long chapter.
Oh, yeah.
You did good.
Yeah.
So, what are our talking points for this chapter?
I would like to bring up a point.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, you mean to tell... So one of the quotes we have from Molly Weasley is, "What's the number of the platform again?" You mean to tell me that Miss Molly Weasley, who herself went to Hogwarts, who has sent all of her kids to Hogwarts and probably knows it like the back of her hand, has to ask her children? I don't think so. I think she saw this poor boy who had a trolley and no parents around and had an owl and was like, oh, this child doesn't know where he's going. He's probably too shy to ask. I'm just going to say really loudly, possibly violating the whole code of secrecy so this boy can get to the right train.
Go Molly Weasley!
Molly is best mom.
Yep. I mean, don't get me wrong, Molly has her issues, especially when it comes to, at least in my opinion, the way she treats Ron. But, I mean, yeah, she's always kind of had a real soft spot for Harry, and she's always treated him like one of her own.
Another point, the twins showing they're actually big brothers to a lot of people. Like, we see it in the 5th book and the 5th movie, when they're like comforting a student after what happened with the worst Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher ever.
Yep.
But here it's like the first point we see is like, oh hey, we see this scrawny kid with no help struggling to get their trunk on. Let's go help him.
Yeah, you definitely see a lot early on a lot earlier on in the book series how much of the brotherly energy the twins give off versus in the films.
Just scrolling down our chat here, because we've had some comments come up as we've been reading, and I just want to move them out of the way. Jordan the Dude says, the twins walked so Ron could run. Tyrion Phoenix said, the actors kind of match well, too. Are you two twins in real life? No, it's weird. We just kind of met at the audition. That is a direct quote from them during an interview, and I love it.
I remember that.
And then, bronze nuts. Jordan the Dude says, Bitterwood found another use for dragon's blood. Who's to say that's not one of the 12 uses? Tyrion Phoenix says, hashtag Ravenclaw. Jordan the Dude says, why did they have to separate the first years? They separate the first years because it actually helps to give that sense of awe and wonder, and it also, if I remember correctly in the lore, mimics the journey that the founders took. It's a symbolic thing.
I believe there was also a headcanon going about that the first years travel by boat there, and then the graduation ceremony was that they took the boats back to signify the end of that journey and the beginning of another.
Oh, I love that. Headcanon accepted.
So nice. I love that.
I know, and it was just so nice because they never talk about it because Harry never went back for his last year.
Yeah.
No.
Tyrion Phoenix says, or it could be making sure Ron was recognizing it. And Jordan the Dude says, Rochellewood.
Look, I've already stated that the Shelwood family is a distant relative of the Weasleys.
The
It
twins.
is canon.
Jordan says the twins are a precursor to Rochellewood.
Yep.
Perhaps not. I will not make any disagreements to that.
Speaking of which,
I just kind of thought of this theory. So, the Weasleys, red-haired and whatnot, the twins, tricksters, jokesters, and whatnot. Same thing with, like, Ro, Shelwood, your OC, Lady Punnet. What if the family of the Weasleys are descended in Norwegian heritage or Norse heritage?
That is a possibility because there are not of the regions and Norse people who are red-haired and freckled.
But like going into Norse mythology, Loki is said to have red hair.
Yep.
Oh, I see where you're going there.
Yeah.
So, I had a thought. When it comes to the Hogwarts Professor's tag on TikTok, Bitterwolf, the Hufflepuff version of Bitterwood that I've got going here, we need to have Bitterwolf and Rochellewood interact, because I guarantee you the Hufflepuff version of Bitterwood would most likely encourage Rochellewood and fully support that and possibly give her access to resources she doesn't otherwise have.
This is true.
Just giving your child more heart attacks. Why don't you?
But,
going back to the book, though, I noticed this in the previous chapter. If you look at the names of the authors of the different textbooks, you'll note that a lot of them actually have to do with the subject they're in.
Yep.
Like, I believe one of them was, like, Spark or something along those lines. And it could just because, they're, like, wizarding families. Of course they have weird names. And I'm like, no, it's kind of symbolic or motifs. I don't want to call it lazy writing because, let's face it, we've all, like, looked up baby names to name our characters, even though no one does that anymore.
Yep.
Yep.
So, Jordan the Dude says the discussion with Draco was also moved to a different location in the film, and yes, it was, and you will see a lot of shit like that. This is why we wanted to go through the books. We know there's people out there who haven't gone through the books, and we're kind of providing this as a bit of a service, but also to kind of rehash certain things for ourselves, because there's so much lore that you don't see from just the movies.
Another point of that matter is, although in the movies the first time he meets Draco Malfoy is in basically outside the Great Hall.
Yep.
The first time meeting him in the books is actually at the robe shop before we even knew what his name was.
Madam Malkin.
Yep.
Yeah. Tyrion Phoenix says, so, Fred and George are Loki variants. Got it.
I accept this headcanon.
Well, no one ever seems... I don't recall if it's in the lore of how people first got their magic. Who's to say they're not like the children of demigods or tricksters or magic holders?
Actually, it's a genetic thing.
Yeah, but you can still have
genetics started.
Yeah, where did the genetics start? Whereas, like, it's not like the mutant variant where it's like a chromosome that happens a mutation every so many decades.
Mm-hmm.
One second.
Yeah.
Holding.
George the dude says George is Willy Wonka. Jordan the dude says George is Willy Wonka.
So there's a website here called sci-fi.stackexchange.com that says, as far as where magic comes from, there is no canon source as to where it originated, as previously stated, that it is a natural occurring force in the Harry Potter universe. In fact, according to the Harry Potter wiki, the earliest recorded magic was done by Egyptians, Indians, and people from ancient Greece. However, let me see. Magic was a supernatural force that changed aspects of the world at fundamental levels. The ability for humans to use magic was a hereditary trait that passed down from a person's ancestors, which allowed witches and wizards to practice it. Rather than being a mystical or unnatural pursuit that defied the laws of nature, however, magic simply allowed those who could wield it to exploit it in very specific and creative ways that Muggle science was unable to replicate. I believe we saw when we were digging at one point for information that there was a potential twist or event or something that warped the actual genetic code of humans, and I can't remember where we found that.
So I remember at one point, sometime last year in the Crimson Entertainment, in the Crimson Entertainment group chats, we were exploring the possibility of one of those major events to change human genetics was the sinking of Atlantis.
But that's something for that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
I would like to point out, however, that the first recorded uses of magic was in ancient Greece and Egyptians. And what's most prevalent in ancient Greece and Egyptians, but especially with ancient Greece, is the existence of demigods.
Yep.
And with ancient Egyptians, they too, similar to the Greeks, have a god for everything. And it was believed that the pharaoh himself was the human avatar of Ra, the god of the sun and king of all gods.
Yep.
In that pantheon.
Yep.
Jordan the dude says George is Willy Wonka. Yeah. Later on.
I could see this. And then Tyrion Phoenix said kind of like a Nehalem kind of thing. Am I reading that right?
Nephilim?
Nephilim.
Yeah. So basically a Nephilim is kind of like a half angel, half demon, or half angel, half human, depending on what mythology you look into.
Yep.
It's a good modern reference I can think of is the Devil May Cry series, where the main protagonist Dante is a Nephilim.
Yep,
that's fair.
Another good point too. Like, we acknowledge Molly Weasley can be a problematic character.
Yes.
But when I think it was either Fred or George asked, "Do you think he remembers?" she instantly shot that down. Like, don't you dare ask him.
Yeah.
He doesn't need remembering that on his first day. Like, we can acknowledge he was an infant. You don't carry memories that vividly when you're 1 year old. Sure, he remembers a flash of light, but the fact that she's like, you don't need to be reminding him of the worst day of his life on his first day of school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, she's always had a soft spot for him since the first time on that platform, and I do agree that she was kind of calling out to him and letting him know that he wasn't alone when he was on that platform trying to figure out when he was lost and scared, especially after the way he'd been treated by the Dursleys, like just kind of dropped off. She was looking out for him effectively.
I would also like to think that she does that on the regular, because when you think about it, there's probably a lot of like Muggleborns who like have no idea how to get there. So I just picture every year, even after there's no more students going, you just see this little old lady saying, "Now where's platform 9 3/4 again?"
Molly Weasley, yeah. Headcanon accepted.
Molly Weasley is the official guider to all Muggleborns.
She is first year mom.
Yep. First year mom.
Jordan. I also, for a fact though, if she had the money and the means, she would ask like each head of house, like, who's staying at Hogwarts this year for Christmas, who's probably not going to get any gifts. And for a fact, if she could, she would send them budgies and sweaters with their first initial on it.
Which, again, is something we'll kind of get into later. Jordan the Dude says Draco and Ron are two sides of the wizarding world.
They're also very distant cousins.
That's true. They're from the Pruitt family, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that make Rose Shelwood a super distant cousin to Draco Malfoy then?
Yep. Oh, I remember why there's a big feud between the Weasleys and the Malfoys now.
Huh.
It had to do with the Pruitts, because apparently, if I'm remembering correctly, like, a Pruitt was engaged to a Malfoy, but the Pruitt decided to marry into the Weasley family instead. If I'm remembering that correctly, because we know that, unfortunately, a lot of purebloods keep marrying cousins.
Yeah. We're not going to go down that path.
Sweet home Alabama.
I'm just going to...
I don't need copyright strikes, thank you.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, maybe I was wrong, because apparently the two main reasons that Malfoy doesn't like the Weasleys is because of their profound support for Dumbledore, and the fact that, unlike the Malfoys, they are open to Muggles being in the wizarding world.
Okay.
But I could have sworn it had something to do with, like, the Pruitt family or something.
Yeah. Kieran Phoenix says, the legend is that angels mated with humans and had children. The children were called Nephilim and had superhuman abilities, but were limited to mortality with a lifespan of 250 years. That legend gave birth to characters such as Hercules and Achilles. Nephilim is also what the hero in Diablo 3 is.
Which is interesting because we know that wizards live longer than Muggles naturally, but that's as a result of their magical ability. They're basically their magical cure-alls.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And with Nicholas Flamel in particular, it was because of the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah. But Nicholas Flamel's also over 600 years old, so...
Yeah, and a very successful alchemist.
And as we found out in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, hasn't seen action since the 17/1800s.
Yep. Also, you had to be very gentle with him.
Well, just because he
I
keeps...
haven't seen the movie.
We can fix this.
We need to fix this.
So, I'm thinking this is actually a good place to wrap up this... Sorry, go ahead.
I just have one more point.
Yep.
Ginny Weasley had a crush on Harry Potter long before she even knew he was friends with her brother.
She had a crush before she realized she had a crush. It's so cute!
She had a celebrity crush. She had the equivalent of, like, when we were all, like, crushing on NSYNC or, like, the big bands. Like, we had a crush on them even though we didn't know them.
Mm-hmm.
Crittershy says, I had to run out for errands, just got back, and I'm cooking now. I see I missed some big topics. You did. You actually missed, if I'm not mistaken, chapters 5 and 6. You missed the first introduction to Diagon Alley, and you missed the journey to Hogwarts.
Yeet.
So.
But it's okay. Real life comes first.
Yep. And we've decided that we're going to be releasing podcast episodes starting next week on Monday and on Thursday. So you will be getting 2 episodes per week, which is 2 chapters per week. So, yeah.
Heck yeah.
No, you're good, Critter. I would recommend going back to review these chapters once the episodes come out. Again, they'll be on YouTube. You can also watch the VOD here on Twitch, but you can watch them on YouTube, or you can listen to literally just the podcast episode. I'll have to wait for the podcast. Yes. So next week is going to be chapter 2 and 3, and then the following week is going to be chapter 4 and 5.
Yep.
So. But yeah, we're basically doubling up the amount of episodes that we put out. That being said, I think this is a good place to wrap this up and wrap the session up, honestly. So, if you would like to follow us, Lady Punnet is on TikTok as paulina.avalon. I am on Linktree, which is linktr.ee/blazewing2010. Reading Dragon is on Linktree at linktr.ee/thereadingdragon. You can find our podcast at anchor.fm/idiot-book-nook. And if you're looking to take a look at our website and the community resources that we've got, you can find us at idiotbooknook.wordpress.com. If you have anything you think we should add to the website, please feel free to email us at idiotbooknook@gmail.com, or,
Do we have a link for that?
No, I do not. Not at the moment. It is, however, on the website, or at least it should be. You can feel free to get in touch with any of us if you have ways to contact us outside of that, or you can just, like I said, email us and drop us the links. It is interesting to note that if you want to leave viewer feedback or viewer comments, and you want to have your voice featured here on the podcast and the streaming sessions, we can make time for that. You can actually leave us audio messages over on Anchor. That's anchor.fm/idiot-book-nook. There's a place there for you to leave audio recordings for us. So if you do that, there's the chance that we could start featuring them in, say, a viewer feedback segment where we sit and we listen to what you have to say, and then we sit here and we discuss it. We basically have a conversation with you live. So feel free to do that. We've enjoyed bringing this to you guys. Like, I know I'm enjoying this trip through. Again, it's bringing something new for me and a new perspective, because I actually get to sit here and talk about this stuff, which is something I've been wanting to do for a while now. I don't know about the two of you.
I like this, because especially for the fact that I haven't read the book series since I was in middle school when the final 3 books were coming out.
Mm-hmm.
That was when I actually got to reading the entire book series, was when the 6th book, Half-Blood Prince, was coming out, and my big sister from the Big Brother Big Sister program at the time said that I needed to read the first 5 books before getting to the 6th book.
Yeah.
So I haven't read the book series since then. So this is also a chance for me to reread this series and just kind of get that whole refresher from almost 20 years ago.
So, anything you want to add, Lady Punnet?
To acknowledge now that my character Rochelle was a distant relative of the Malfoys, and I don't know how I feel.
Oh,
We broke Lady Punnet.
Oh no.
Well,
oh no, I'm sorry.
Well, with that being said, we're going to bring this session and episode 6, as it were, to a close. So, from the Idiot Book Nook, I'm Blazewing.
I am the dragon.
I'm Lady Punnet.